Hello everybody, this is Anson from AnsonAlex.com and welcome to part 3 of my 2013 video series on using Google Calendar. Part 1 served as an introduction, part 2 talked about creating events in Google Calendar, and here in part 3 we're going to talk about working with shared calendars, how different users can interact with those shared calendars, and as part of it we're going to talk about working with multiple calendars at once. I know we spoke about that a little bit early in the series, but we're going to go more in depth in this video, so I hope it helps and enjoy everyone. Okay, so here I am in my Google Calendar, and if you've been following along thus far in the series, you'll know that I haven't created any additional calendars yet. I have the 4 calendars that were created by default from Google when I created my account. My personal calendar, my tasks calendar, contacts birthdays, and then the US holidays calendar. Also, just as a quick recap, remember that all the events on my calendar, the color of the event is associated with the color of the calendar it's on. So all of the red events are on the Anson Alexander calendar. All of the green events are on the US holidays calendar. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to create an entirely new calendar that I can share with other members of my organization. So I'm going to create a calendar to hold organizational events so that when I hire new employees, instead of having to invite them to 30 events I have in the future, I can just share my organizational events calendar with them and they'll have access to view all of those events. At the same time, because we can hide and show calendars here in Google Calendar, remember just by clicking on a calendar, I can hide events and display events from it. By creating an organizational events calendar, I can separate it from my personal calendar so that if I just want to look at the organizational events alone or just my personal events alone, I can do that without having to sift through all the other events. So to get started, on the left side of my screen where it says My Calendars, I'm just going to click on the drop down to the right of it, and you'll see that I have the option to create a new calendar. When I do that, it's going to bring me to the new calendar creation screen where I can go ahead and I can enter the name of this calendar, and I'm just going to call this one Organizational Events. I could add a description for this calendar if I wanted to. I could also add a location if it was a specific area where all the events in this calendar would be taking place. For this purpose, I don't need to necessarily enter a location here. You can specify all the details, United States, Eastern Time, that's fine. Now down here is the important part. I have the option to share this calendar, which I definitely want to do. So I can go ahead and I can click this button that says Share This Calendar. And you'll notice that I could make this calendar public. So if I wanted to create a public calendar, maybe I had a non-for-profit organization holding fundraiser events and I want the public to be able to see those events so they can attend, I could make this a public calendar. For this purpose, I don't want this to be a public calendar. I want this just to be my organization. So I can actually keep this checkbox checked that says Share This Calendar with everyone in the organization, AnsonAlex.com. To the right, I can also specify the specific permissions that each user is going to have for this calendar. So by default, they'll be able to see all the event details, but I could also specify that they can only see free busy periods, which would mean they won't be able to see the events on this calendar, but they would be able to see when there are open slots within the time. So maybe I've got 4 events on Monday and I've got an open time period between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. By choosing this option, my other users wouldn't be able to see what other events I've going on Monday, but they would be able to see that I've got a 2-hour block free. So generally speaking, you're going to let them see all event details. Now at the same time, if you only wanted to share this calendar with a few people in your organization, you could uncheck this checkbox and enter their email address down here below. Or if you did want to share this calendar with people outside of your organization that don't have an AnsonAlex.com email address, I could enter them manually below. So, for example, I wouldn't have to do this in this specific situation, but I have a user, I have Bruce Wayne, yes, he's an employee of mine, just kidding, who is in my organization, so he would be shared this calendar because I have this box checked, but I just wanted to show you that you'll see as I begin typing his name, he comes up as an option to share this calendar with. I can go ahead, add him to my list, and if I scroll down a little bit here, I have the same permission options for him, but I can actually allow him to make changes to this calendar. So I could allow him to make changes to events, or I could also allow him to make changes and manage sharing, which means he could share that calendar with other people. I'm going to pretend that Bruce Wayne is my chief operating officer, so I want him to have full access to this calendar. So I'm going to give him make changes and manage sharing permissions. Once I'm ready, I can go ahead and click the Create Calendar button. You'll notice it might take a second here, but there we go. I now have another calendar on the left side of my screen called Organizational Events. And for the purpose of this tutorial, let's go ahead and let's just hide my other calendars by clicking on them. So you'll see that I now have no events on my calendar because we haven't created any events in the organizational calendar yet. So let's go ahead and let's create an event for Tuesday the 10th. I'm just going to call this Board Meeting. Now, I could specify all the details about this event as we talked about in the last video in the series, but for sake of time, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and create this event. We'll pretend it's an all-day event, and I am going to add a couple other events in here as well. Let's say on Thursday the 19th, we've got a company outing. We'll go ahead and we'll add that as an all-day event, and then maybe on Monday the 23rd, we have a computer training course. We've got somebody coming from the outside to go ahead and train us on computers. I was unavailable that day, so we had to get somebody else to do it. Okay, so I've got 3 events on my organizational events calendar, and because that's the only one being displayed right now, it looks pretty clean and I can only see those events. Now remember, once I click on these other calendars, all my other events are going to appear. So you can see I now see the events on my personal calendar in red. I can see the organizational events in blue. If I had any tasks, they would be blue also. So this might be a good situation for me to go over here and change the color by clicking on the drop-down menu. I could change the color of my organizational events calendar, and you'll notice that the events change color as well. Now, the whole idea of this video is to take a look at how shared calendars work. So I actually am signed in to Bruce Wayne's account here in Incognito in Google Chrome. So if I go ahead and you can see I'm in Bruce Wayne's account. Now let's go ahead and let's try refreshing this calendar here. You'll notice that all of a sudden organizational events showed up under my calendars for Bruce Wayne. You can tell I'm Bruce Wayne because if you look at the top right, I'm logged in as bruce.wayne@ansonalex.com. Now you'll notice that for the current week, we don't have any events being displayed. But if I go ahead and I switch to the monthly view, there we go. We have 3 events that are on the organizational events calendar. And Bruce Wayne can pick his own color for this calendar. If he changes it to yellow, and I go back to the calendar on the Anson Alexander account, and I'll even refresh just to prove it to you, the event colors will not change. Let's go back to the monthly view. They're still blue, so that is a personal setting. You can see the different colors on our 2 calendars here. Now, one last thing, it's pretty simple. I mean, we've got a shared calendar now. If I go over to Bruce Wayne's account, he can go ahead and he can create events on the organizational events calendar. But there's one thing that I do want to mention before I finish up with this video, and that is before I went on my Anson Alexander account, the only calendar I had displayed was the organizational events calendar, and when I clicked to create an event, you'll notice that it automatically went on the organizational events calendar. And the reason that is because since it's the only one being displayed, Google just assumes, hey, I'm sure you want this event on the organizational events calendar, so I'm just going to default to that calendar. But if I close this out over here on Bruce Wayne's account and I display all of my calendars and now I go to create a new event, you'll notice that it defaults to the Bruce Wayne calendar. So this is something that you have to be really careful of. I talked about it in the last video, but when you're working with multiple calendars, you need to make sure that you're creating your events on the proper calendar. So Bruce Wayne, if he wants to create an event on the organizational events calendar, needs to make sure he clicks on the drop down and chooses the organizational events calendar. From here, we could just create a new event. I'm just going to call it test event. So Bruce Wayne now creates an event. Here it is on the calendar. If I go ahead and return to Anson Alexander's, oops, I got them all closed here. Now I'm back in Anson Alexander's account, and if I just refresh this page and go back to my monthly view, you'll see I have a test event here. I could click on it. I could edit this event. Both Anson Alexander and Bruce Wayne have access to manage sharing and change all the details of the events on the organizational events calendar. But this is a really great way to organize things between different employees within your organization or even people outside of your organization. You could create a calendar for every single one of your clients. You could put all of your events associated with that client on that calendar, share it with the client. That way the client can see everything that's going on between your organization and their organization. And if you just want to take a bird's eye view and just see the events that you have with that one client, you can hide all of your other calendars and just take a look at that one calendar. So shared calendars is super, super useful here in Google Calendar. It's pretty easy to do. As you could see how easy it was to create a calendar. The big thing is, again, to remember that you're creating events on the proper calendar and you should have no problems. So I hope this video helped everyone. If it did, I would really appreciate a thumbs up here on YouTube. And if you want to see more technology tips and tutorials, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. That's all I have for you today. This is Anson from AnsonAlex.com.